Hi, I'm Stacy LaMontagne with Cherry Bekaert out of the Washington, D.C. practice. We are CPAs and advisors focused on innovative, growing middle market companies throughout the U.S. Today, I am here with Andrew Gostine from Whiteboard Coordinator, who is the CEO. We're going to hear a little bit more about what they do, how they've had to pivot in the last few months, and what keeps them committed to their mission. So first off, Andrew, thank you for your time today. I appreciate it. If you wouldn't mind, start off with telling us just a little bit more about Whiteboard Coordinator.
Perfect. Thanks for having me. So Whiteboard Coordinator is really the story of my frustration with practicing medicine and being removed from patient care. You know, when I started off in medical school, it was 100% of my time was focused on being at the bedside and taking care of patients. And then as I escalated through my clinical training and into private practice, it was less and less of my time spent with the patient and more on kind of back office, administrative, clerical tasks to get through my day. And it is really a main driver of burnout and dissatisfaction, both on the patient part, but also on the clinician part. So I developed this platform company, which is really an IoT sensor platform. And there's a lot of jargon in there, but essentially what it is using cameras and microphones and Bluetooth and RFID and all of these other sensors that are right at the point of care to collect information passively. So rather than having the clinician sit down and document things like, I just saw the patient for 14 minutes, we can just use a sensor to record how long the clinician was there. Mm-hmm. So it's really an AI-enabled sensor platform to collect information about any problem or situation in a hospital to automate a lot of the recording of data that clinicians are spending their time on.
That's fascinating. And so in building this platform, what kind of partnerships or collaborations were necessary to even get the company off the ground?
Yeah, so it seems mundane, but honestly, one of the most important things I did, which was a little bit of an inflection point for our company, was just getting our own hiring process solidified. So, not really a partnership, but the day I found Gusto to manage our back office, payroll and benefits and hiring processes really allowed me to offer my first employee a W-2. And I could not attract people out of their current jobs by saying, I'm going to pay you on a 1099 and we don't have healthcare benefits and we don't have a 401k. So just getting my own house in order to be able to attract employees was a little bit of a turning point. But once the foundation of our company, kind of operationalizing what we had to do to actually be a company, then it was partnerships with hospitals, because ultimately we developed a platform that is so powerful it can be applied to any clinical problem. I did that because I knew I would never be able to think about all of the use cases, all of the problems that we could solve with this. So partnerships with hospitals, with patients and people inviting us to be part of their patient journey was the second part of the equation that helped us really take off.
And so with the pandemic that we're currently going through and all the crazy things that are happening, how has COVID impacted Whiteboard Coordinator? And how have you had to pivot to potentially address some of the issues that are out there?
So, I now like to say, especially with our investors, that we're diversified around COVID. So we made this platform. It was always the thesis of our company that this is a really powerful technology. I have a sensor array that can replace all of the human senses with sight and sound and proprioception and figuring out where things are. I knew we would never be able to develop, ahead of working with hospitals, all of the potential use cases for this. So we, in the middle of COVID, started spinning out solutions to address COVID-related problems like temperature screening, contact tracing, web apps to screen employees as they were on their way to work to try to prevent COVID from showing up in areas of the hospital where it's not supposed to be. we also have really great solutions that we were working on before COVID related to just improving productivity, to bring down the cost of care and to improve profit margins so that hospitals have more resources to devote to patient care. So at this point, we're now diversified around it, but without COVID as the impetus for doing some of those things, we wouldn't be solving a lot of the problems we are today.
That's great. And so you feel like with COVID, has it allowed you to kind of make some more connections or potentially meet with more hospitals earlier in the process to help not only spread what you're doing with COVID, but all the other uses from the technology?
Yeah, so, we developed a lot of these COVID-related solutions somewhat selfishly because it was a great way to get introductions to a lot of other healthcare systems. And so, we went from having some of our marquee clients, our initial 10 hospitals, and those relationships had matured over a year. Within those hospitals, we developed our COVID solutions. And then over the first 3 months of COVID, we tripled our install base, went to 30 hospitals. And really, COVID was the driver of that. So now that we have these relationships, we're able to maintain those COVID-related solutions, but also develop new solutions and get them interested in our other non-COVID solutions.
Right. Knowing what you know today and the journey that you've had to get to here, what advice would you have for that next person who has a startup idea who wants to get going?
So running a startup and even just taking that first step is all about finding the problem you want to solve and then working backwards from there. People think of all these startups as overnight successes, and that's never the case. It's more like you work for 7 years really hard in the background, and then people recognize you as an overnight success. It's all about finding that problem, figuring out how your solution is differentiated, and then working backwards from the problem to the solution in very small steps. So you have to break up your company into a series of thousands of small problems. And the way I think about them is, what can I do in the next hour to solve any one of those problems to put my company in a better position?
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Andrew. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me.